Afternoon. My name is Lori Takeuchi, and I'm an NSF program officer in the ECR program. And today I'm here with ECR colleagues Jessica Spybrook and Crystal Smith, along with many members of the AIR ECR Hub team in support of us program officers. And together we're going to be discussing the EDU Core Research or ECR program. So here's what we're going to be, here's what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start with an overview of the ECR solicitation. Then we'll discuss ECR's emphasis on fundamental research. We'll offer a few examples of recent ECR funded studies and walk you through how to search for other examples. And then we're going to respond to your questions at the end. So feel free to use the Q&A box to post questions as we go along, but be sure to indicate anonymous if you'd like to before posting so that you can stay anonymous. If you don't care, then you don't have to do that. Okay, and then following the presentation, we're going to answer any questions submitted during the registration process, as well as those that come in today. So we're going to hold off answering any questions until the very end. But then after the webinar, we'll email you a copy of the slides presented today so that you don't have to take notes. And then the slides and recording will also be posted on the ECR page on the NSF website. Okay, so let's start with the ECR solicitation. Okay, so the deadline for proposals this year is Thursday, October 5th, 2023. And this solicitation will probably remain unchanged for the next several years, so you can plan for early October deadlines for the foreseeable future. That said, be sure to check the NSF website before preparing and submitting your proposal, just to make sure you haven't missed an updated solicitation or due date. Next slide. Okay, so according to the solicitation, you're required to specify in your proposal what level of funding you're seeking for your project. So level 1 proposals may request up to $500,000, level 2 may request up to $1.5 million, and level 3 proposals may request up to $2.5 million. So you can request a duration of between 3 and 5 years for any of these amounts. And as required in the solicitation, the proposal must justify the level of funding and duration. So in other words, why do you need this much money? And why will it take you this long to complete the proposal? I'm sorry, the project. So every year we get several inquiries, previous slide actually. So every year we get several inquiries from PIs asking how to decide which level of funding is appropriate for their project. And the solicitation suggests 2 criteria for deciding. First, the maturity of the proposed work, and second, the size and scope of the empirical effort. So, for instance, if you're getting a new line of inquiry off the ground, then it's likely you'll seek level 1 funding for a lower amount and possibly lower duration. If, on the other hand, you are looking to scale up research that you've been working on for several years, then a level 3 might be more appropriate. Either way, your proposal must justify the expense and the duration. And believe me, we program officers and even reviewers can pretty easily spot when PIs stuff their budgets with unneeded expenses just to get the maximum amount possible. So don't do that. Another thing to keep in mind is that the proposed work must be commensurate with the proposed time. So if it looks to us program officers like you can complete the proposed work in 3 years as opposed to the 5 that you've indicated in your proposal, we're going to question you about that, should the proposal reach the stage of being considered for funding. On the other hand, if it looks like there's no way you can complete the proposed work in the 3 years you've proposed, like it's way too much work to pack in that short amount of time, then we're also going to call you out on that. If in doubt, look at the abstracts of a few ECR awards made at various levels to get a sense of what might be appropriate for your project. And Jessica's actually going to give tips later on today on how to search for ECR awards abstracts. Also note that these amounts do include your indirect cost rate. So make sure that when you're working through your budget, you know how much your institution will take off the top. And for many of you university people, that's like half or more than half. Okay, and still staying on the slide, I'm sorry, this is like the longest description that I'm going to give of the fewest amount of words in a single slide. ECR also supports other projects, including pilot studies. And I'll just go through these really quickly. Pilot studies, synthesis proposals, and conference proposals. Pilot studies are small-scale studies that investigate underdeveloped aspects of what might become a larger study later on. So pilot studies should produce evidence that help the research team make critical decisions about future work. And they can include high-risk strategies or methods that need exploration before further research is justified. And these are always considered level 1 proposals and should request less than $500,000 and a maximum of 3 years. Synthesis proposals, these are typically budgeted at level 1 or level 2. And they synthesize fundamental knowledge and findings on a topic of critical importance to STEM learning, broadening participation, or workforce development. And they should strive to present the state of the field's knowledge on one area or across several disciplines, depending, as well as highlight issues for future work. And then the third project type is the conference proposal, which plan for focused meetings related to ECR goals. And budgets here should be commensurate with the duration of the event and the number of participants, although that budget range is typically between $25,000 and $99,000. If you're interested in proposing a conference proposal project, then please reach out to an ECR program officer to talk through your idea. This is the one proposal type that we like to do that in advance of submission. And additionally, we also encourage you to visit NSF's Proposal and Award Policy and Procedures Guide, also known as the PAPPG, for more information on conference proposals. And just to clarify, I realize what I said may have been confusing. Research proposals, these different proposal types are kind of considered, the pilot, synthesis, and conferences are considered different from like regular research proposals. And the research proposals, again, can be any level or duration. Again, commensurate with the work and that type of thing. Okay, thanks for bearing with me through that long slide. Next slide. Okay, so ECR proposals must also specify which research area they aim to address. Area 1 is research on STEM learning and learning environments. Area 2 is research on broadening participation in STEM. And the third area is research on STEM workforce development. So note that many ECR projects overlap in 2 or more of these areas. However, we do ask that you list the most salient area first in your project proposal. We do ask that you specify not just the level type, but the research area in your proposal, front and center, first line of your proposal, and clearly stated in your project summary. Okay, so let's look at like a little bit closer at each of these. Next slide. Okay, so track 1 is research on STEM learning and learning environments. So it supports research that advances knowledge about STEM learning in the many environments and contexts in which such learning takes place. So research in the area may inform or build upon research from multiple disciplines and can include studies at multiple levels of analysis, including at the level of the learner, the teacher, the environment, or broader context. So these proposals cross a large number of topics, including assessment, cognitive aspects of teaching or learning, implications of STEM practices on learning, and the development and refinement of methods for STEM research, etc. Okay, next slide now. Track 2 involves research on broadening participation in STEM. So this includes research investigating issues related to the participation of groups underrepresented in STEM at both the individual and institutional levels. So topics here might include innovative and culturally responsive pedagogy, motivation, academic achievement, and sense of belonging, intersectionality and the experience of students in STEM, etc. Okay, and then next slide. Track 3 is research on STEM workforce development, which invests in fundamental research to strengthen the STEM workforce. So projects here offer evidence on how best to prepare a STEM workforce that is ready to capitalize on the latest advances in technology and science and to address current and future social and economic challenges. So here, ECR is interested in studies of reskilling and upskilling workers for STEM positions in a variety of contexts like workplaces and online environments, and that advance the knowledge base of personalized learning in these contexts. Okay, so I've said enough, and now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to talk about fundamental research, which is at the core of the ECR program.
Great, thanks, Lori. Before I get started, just a quick reminder that much of this session today is dedicated to your questions and answers, or us, trying to give you some answers. But please feel free to go ahead and put questions in the Q&A box as I'm talking, and then we are going to spend a lot of time going through questions that were submitted before or that are coming in now. So just a little bit about the fundamental research in ECR. So next slide, please. So you've already heard Lori talk about this, because in each of the descriptions of the 3 different types of research, there was the word fundamental in there. And so a lot of times people kind of ask, well, what are you talking about when you talk about fundamental research within the ECR core program? So here we're talking about research that is going to generate knowledge and understanding with the potential for broad relevance, address important questions, as you know, related to STEM learning, broadening participation, workforce development, but we're not necessarily talking about something that's going to generate knowledge or findings with immediate applications at the practice level. So for example, if you're familiar with the DRK-12 or the Discovery Research K-12 program, much of that work is focused on the practical applications. So what can we do in classrooms? What can we do in schools? And there we're looking to fund much more applied research. When we're in the ECR core program, it's really about kind of advancing that fundamental knowledge. It doesn't have to have a direct implication to practice. The findings can be distal from immediate practice. Next slide, please. So for example, kind of broadly speaking for a second here, so fundamental research, it may involve identification and exploring new constructs in education, in learning, in workforce development. Could involve trying to gain a better understanding of current constructs, better understanding of relationships for STEM learning or for broadening participation. It may be used to extend research, to extend methods. So perhaps you are a methodologist and you're interested in extending a specific methodology that's going to help others then do better fundamental research. So it's quite broad in that sense in terms of, kind of the topic areas. And as you can see on this slide, I say it may do these things because this is just kind of a big picture list of what we're talking about with fundamental research. So let's drill down a little bit from that big picture and actually walk us through a few examples to give you a sense of the breadth of the type of research that we do fund within ECR core. So first example, so this is it's called the Subgroup Fair Coding Taken to Scale for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Learning. So kind of a mouthful here. But basically what this study is trying to do, and you'll see that I've listed the award number on here, and there's also a link. And so I think Joni put the link in the chat. Thank you, Joni. So you can click on that, and what you'll see is every proposal that is funded by NSF is going to have an abstract that's available to the public. So this is, kind of what I'm giving you as examples, and it kind of will give you a sense of what type of work that we fund. So in this particular study, they're seeking to create and validate a process that is designed to effectively and fairly code education learning data. So specifically, they're really seeking to test this approach to coding STEM learning, and it's unique in the sense that it doesn't just simply base things on hand coding, and so it's trying to use some machine learning here to increase efficiency. The specific approach is going to require less data than is typically needed through some of the data sciences, and so this is really helpful for the learning sciences because often that large quantity of data is not available. as you read through the abstract, you'll see that this is an approach that they're really working on to look at subgroup differences and the importance of this work. It's really about fairness in coding. Part of their process for dissemination, part of their process for dissemination too is this is going to be made publicly available for use by other researchers. So this is just one sense. This one is really, falls into that bucket of understanding the STEM learning and learning environment. So let's look at the second example. Thank you. Okay, so the second example is more around the broadening participation type of research that we fund within the ECR core. So again, there is a link here so you can go in and learn a little bit more about this particular study. But in general, this study seeks to examine the lived experiences of African-American engineering undergraduates at 3 predominantly white institutions. So specifically, the investigators focus on how students encounters with racism, stereotyping, discrimination, and gender biases, and how that may increase their isolation and contribute to decisions to switch to non-engineering degrees during the first 2 years of the program. It also examines strategies for the African-American students who do persist in these engineering programs. This particular study is a mixed methods design, and it's collecting real-time qualitative and quantitative data from participants. And it really, when you think about dissemination and kind of broader impact here, it's really around how can we learn and understand and help others with their efforts around engineering and other STEM programs to diversify their student bodies. So even just from example 1 to example 2, hopefully you're starting to get a sense that there is no specific method that is prioritized in ECR core. It's really about rigorous methods to ask the types of research questions that you're interested in. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the third example is a study around virtual reality to improve students' understanding of the extremes of scale in STEM. And so basically what this is saying is that research suggests that students of all ages have inaccurate ideas about the relative size of scientific entities, such as molecules and cells, compared to the Earth, Moon, and the Sun. And this lack of understanding of scale can really be a barrier to entry into STEM fields. So this particular project is seeking to create a virtual reality called Scale Worlds, which is designed to help students understand fundamental concepts related to size and scale. And an iterative design process is used to create this scale world or scale worlds, and then studies will be conducted to determine that best virtual environment as well as the most effective set of elements and experiential cues to maximize student engagement and student learning around size and scale. So again, here now we've gone down to you can imagine younger learners, earlier on compared to the last one where we were looking at college-going experiences. There's a wide variety of samples and populations that we're focused on in the ECR core. Next slide, please. So one thing that I would suggest that you do as you're thinking about, is my work a good fit for ECR? So one of my favorite things to do, because as I'm a rotating program officer at NSF, so I've sat on the other side as a PI for a long time. And I must admit that the NSF website, whether you're on the PI side or I think actually on the program officer side too, can be a little tricky and it's not the easiest to navigate. And so what I've done here is to try and just make the steps really easy for you to go out and to search for awards, because I think it's really helpful to see what type of work is being funded, what's the scope of that work, what are the budgets associated with these projects as you put together your own projects. So the first link at the top, and I believe, thank you, Joni has already put that into the chat. So that brings you to the ECR landing page. And once you're on the landing page, if you scroll down, you're going to see this option that says browse, awards made through this program. So if you click on the awards made through this program, next slide, please. What you see is you'll start to see this long list of awards from the ECR program. So some of the things that I like to do to try and make the list a little bit more manageable and focused. So one of the things, I think if you do a click for me here, we'll get an arrow coming up. Let's see. Yes, thank you. Okay, so my favorite feature is the sort by. And when you click on the sort by, that drop down there, you can sort by different options. So personally, I like to sort by start date because I think it's really helpful to see, okay, what were some of the recent projects that were funded? Because I like to kind of look at, what has been funded in the past couple of years. So you can certainly, do it by any of these things, but start date is one option to do. Next, if you click one more time, okay, so another option that you can do is you can go to the advanced search. So this is if you are already a little bit more focused and want to look for projects maybe that have been funded in your particular area, if you click on the advanced search, and Danielle, if you can click one more for me, thank you, then you get to this option here where you can have a more focused search. So for example, maybe PIs who are in your area. Go and see, what have they been funded to do? Or maybe you have particular keywords that you want to put in, and you can do that, and you can also narrow your search this way. But I would just say spend some time with this search feature because I actually think it's one of the really good parts of the NSF website because it'll help you, start to gain a sense of what we're funding within ECR. So next slide, please. So couple things, as you move towards October 5th, we are happy to talk with folks and help steer them as best we can in thinking about their potential ECR proposal. So one way that you can reach us is you can email us at the ecr@nsf.gov. And that will bring you to kind of the overall ECR email. And then from there, the program lead oftentimes funnels it to somebody who has expertise in your area. And so with that email, what we ask you to do is to send a 1 and no more than 2-page concept paper so that we have a sense of, where to funnel that to, and so that we can tailor those conversations to use our time really wisely, basically. We will do these, we'll stop scheduling these after August 31, so definitely reach out sooner rather than later because we just want to make sure that folks have adequate time to, work on their proposals, because if you haven't done one of these, you'll realize there's a lot of work that's involved here. I actually am going to turn it over to Danielle for a minute here to talk about those 1-page concept papers as AIR has been doing some work with the field around this.
All right. Yes, I'm ready. All right, cool. So again, the purpose of this workshop, it's really a workshop, not necessarily a presentation. We're gonna walk you through thinking through how to prepare your ECR 1-page project summary.
Sorry, good afternoon. My name is Danielle Ferguson. As Jessica said, I am a co-PI of the ECR Hub. And so this is a project that is funded through the ECR program. And one of our main goals is to help support both current and prospective ECR grantees. So we will be providing workshops and webinars. We'll be around like how to apply for the ECR program or any other topics related to the ECR program. And so recently, one of the workshops that we provided virtually was how to create or craft a 1-page summary that you can send to a program officer if you're interested in applying for ECR program. And so we have the recording in the chat to the YouTube video. The YouTube video will really walk you through the steps for crafting that 1-pager. So if you're not sure what to include, so typically we suggest you include a project overview. So that would be like a description of your project, the research questions, your theoretical framework. You also want to include a description of the intellectual merit and the broader impacts. I think that will kind of give program officers a broad overview of what you are suggesting for your project, and then it will help them be able to support you. So take a look at the YouTube video. Feel free to reach out to us as well. Our contact information is there, and soon we'll also have a website where you can find other resources as well. And so next, I'm going to pass it on to Crystal so that we can have the question and answer portion of this.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to go ahead and get started. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to get started just reading the questions that were submitted prior to